While the name cowboys draw the headlines, they aren't the only superstars of the rodeo arena. There is the other performer. More and more, rodeo stock is receiving the recognition it deserves. It is the animals which, more often than not, determine the champion cowboys. No matter how gifted, the best hands in the world won't score high without a reciprocal effort by that other performer. These animals are champions in their own right. They'll goose egg a cowboy or take him to the pay window. It is the stock contractor who supplies the bucking stock, and he delights in providing the rankest, buckingest bulls and broncs available. Representative of the many stock contractors in Western Canada is Reg Kesler of Kesler Rodeo Limited. Reg rode into the Rosemary area of Alberta on horseback in the 40s and stayed to develop a vast ranching and rodeo stock operation.
We got started in the rodeo business because of the fact that horses were kind of getting out of the country, you know what I mean? They were sending most of them to these plants and things, and kind of coupled with rodeo. You know, I rodeoed for a long time before I ever had any bucking horses. And we just kind of got it into our head that maybe we'd start raising a few horses. We sent a few horses to Calgary to start with, I think as early as 1947. And continued sending horses there ever since. And I guess we just kind of fell into it, so to speak. We kind of planned it a little bit in the last 15 or 20 years, but well, it's an interesting business, and as long as you like something you're doing, you know, that's half the battle. We've got horses that we did raise. We've got a horse called Willie Rock. He's a pretty well-known horse. And he's 22 years old, and we've got a horse called Hard Twist. He's 21 years old. Those horses are out of the same mare. We raised a few horses back that far.
Buy some from the Indians, too? A lot of them are Indian horses?
I bought a lot of horses from Indians, you bet. In fact, some of as good of horses as I have, I've bought from Indians. This horse that won the prize for the best bucking horse at Calgary this past year, and at the Canadian finals and at the Oklahoma City finals, that horse we call Short Crop, we bought from an Indian. He has a 161 brand on him, and we have maybe 20 head of those horses with that brand on in our string of horses. Action and power. What I mean, you've got to have a combination of all three, I think, for saddle broncs, because these cowboys today, what I mean, they're specialists, you know. They're not necessarily cowboys in the sense it's people used to know cowboys. They are a different brand of people. What I mean, they are athletes, so to speak, and you've got to have something a little bit above the ordinary, or you're not going to be pleasing myself and the public. You know what I mean? They say you always laugh when one of us guys buck off, and I said, yeah. I said, because I said, you know, if a horse don't buck, you guys are always cussing about it.
It all comes down to breeding pretty well, I guess, now. Reg, you wouldn't buy a lot of stock, I don't suppose, anymore, eh?
We don't have to buy very many. We buy the good one if we run into him, of course, but basically, what I mean, over 50% of the horses that we're bucking right now, we've raised at our ranch here, and it looks like we're doing pretty good. A lot of people are trying to raise these bucking horses, but they don't seem to be able to come up with the right kind of a strain. Well, we have 5 strains of horses that we're instigating, or I should say implementing in this line of bucking horses, and they're not related at all. And the past history of them for the last 10 or 15 years is that they buck. We have quite a few horses that in the corral there, they are stallions, stud horses, and we're bucking those horses all the time. And we've raised them all, and some of them are related, but there's 5 lines of horses there that aren't related, and we think that maybe we're about on the right track, because it sure looks like it.
Well, what kind of breed or crossbreed then do you find really makes the best bucking stock?
Well, I don't know. I don't hold with any special crossbreed or any special breed of horse, because, you know, they're just like ball players or hockey players or anything else. You know what I mean? If they can, they can. And if they can't, they can't. And that's all there is to it. The thing is that you've got to be able to get the can into the horse and the can't out. And what I mean, we just try and pick up the horses that are consistently bucking, and we have done. We've picked up, we have a big horse down here in the corral, a horse called Easy Money. He must weigh 1450, and that's what we're really lacking in the horse business today is size. What I mean, you take a cowboy weighing about 160 to 180 pounds, and he puts on a 40-pound saddle on one of these horses. There's a combination of 200 pounds, as against most often a horse that's weighing in the neighborhood of 1,000 to 1,150. Well, you know, he's kind of handicapped, whereas if you can put the cowboy on a horse weighing 13 or 1,400 pounds, well, then the horse has got a little better chance, and that's what I'm interested in.
How young are they when you start bucking them, and can you determine very early whether or not you're going to have a good bucker or not?
Well, in the first place, we start these horses maybe once. Normally, about 3 years old, we buck the odd one at 2, but not very many. And 3 years old, we buck them a couple of 3 times. And if they really buck outstanding, we don't buck them anymore until the next year, and then we'll buck them about 3 or 4 times then. And then the following year, well, we go to bucking these horses. And normally, not without too many exceptions, those horses will keep right on bucking. But, you know, young horses, if bucked too hard to start with, they're just like ball players or hockey players. If they work too hard to start with, sometimes they get pretty sour and they're not too interested in. I think a bucking horse has a lot of interest in bucking because, contrary to all this cruelty talk, you can turn a bunch of horses out of a corral after you've bucked them, and those horses will be starting to buck and play and run across the country. Well, you know, basically, when you take your saddle horse out of a pen that he's been in and held in confinement for a while and turn him out, the first thing he does is start to buck and play. So I maintain that bucking is kind of a normal deal with horses rather than a forceful deal.
Do you get your back up a little when you hear people not really familiar with the sport make the cruelty charges in rodeo?
Well, I don't really get my back up because I just put it down as the fact that they really don't know exactly what they're talking about. 90% of the people have no idea. They just imagine these things, you know. Whereas basically if they would come around to people like myself, they're always talking about a flank strap on a horse. You know, every man that walks around with a pair of pants and a belt on has a flank strap on, and I don't see him doing any gyrations or anything out of the ordinary, you know, and so I kind of think possibly they're over-exaggerating some of this stuff a little.
You know your stock very well. Your broncs, for example, are they pretty predictable? Do you know from show to show pretty much what each is going to do?
Well, I would say that I know that 95% of them are going to buck real good. Now, there's the odd horse that sometimes will run off and not buck as well as he usually does, but you know what I mean, they don't talk our language, and so they can't tell you exactly if there's something wrong with them. But normally I can tell if there's something wrong with a horse, and we don't buck them if we feel like there's something wrong.
Reg, I guess 3 bars here has got to be kind of the pride of the works, eh?
Well, as far as we're concerned, what I mean, she's maybe the most outstanding bareback horse, female variety anyway, that's been around in a long time. And what I mean, she's almost 18 years old, and according to most stock contractors and a lot of cowboys, she's maybe one of the rankest horses that's ever been.
How many colts would you have off her now?
Well, we got 8 colts off of her. We've got 2 or 3 colts we're going to show you that we're bucking some, and some we haven't got here. Some we've got at Missoula, Montana. But we've got 8 colts off of her, and we've tried them all excepting this this colt here that's on the mare now, and yearling, and they all buck, so that's a pretty good indication that we're on the right track there.
Can't beat that consistency, eh?
No, you sure can't.
And she's still one of the best pushing 20, eh? Do you have them into the 20s, I suppose? They go over 20 years?
Oh, yeah, we've got horses that are bucking every day that are over 20 years old. We've got horses like Storm Cloud, and I say they're bucking every day. They buck maybe once every 2 weeks or something like that. And horses like Moonshine, maybe one of the greatest bareback horses that ever was, too. Well, he's win more prizes than any other bareback horse alive. And he's 20 now and still bucking real good. We have Hat Rack, who's 25 or 26 years old, and he still bucks real good. In fact, we bucked him last fall, and he threw one of the leading bareback riders on the ground in about 4 seconds. But we don't buck the old horse that much because we kind of respect him, sort of, you know.
This white-faced mare here now, is that one of the best in your string?
She's a real good mare. That mare is a horse we call Billy Jack. Her mother is a mare that we bought quite a number of years ago. We don't have her anymore. She died of old age. Called That's All. And we've got quite a few direct descendants out of That's All. And with the exception of the first colt that she ever had, every one of them bucks real good.
The old story goes, they got to be born to buck. It's not something you can teach them or train them, is it?
Well, I don't think you can. What I mean, you take a jumper, an athlete. He can jump maybe 5 feet, or maybe he can jump 7 feet. Well, the same with horses. You know, they can either jump and perform, or they can't. And with consistent management and the right kind of handling, you know, why, you can improve their bucking. Just, you know, you can overdo it too, and you can stop them. But you can really improve a horse that inclined to buck and has a disposition. Why, you can darn sure get them to buck real good.
Will some of them buck themselves out ahead of their time?
Well, usually if you get past about 2 years with a horse, unless something that you can't tell about, maybe he's hurts himself a little bit or pulls some muscles or something, you know, they don't usually stop bucking. Of course, I guess you could stop bucking if you wanted to work them to death, and just like anybody gets tired, you know, but we don't do that. We try and keep our horses pretty good shape, and we feed him lots of oats. And, you know, I've always maintained that if you feed a saddle horse enough oats some morning, he might buck you off.
Reg, we've been talking mostly about broncs, saddle and bareback. You're also raising bulls, too. Which do you prefer? Would you rather work with the broncs, or do you enjoy raising the bulls, too?
I don't enjoy Brahma bulls at all. I'll have to be truthful with you. What I mean, everything that we have to do with a Brahma bull is trouble. And crossbred or otherwise. What I mean, we've got this bull Walter down there. Everybody knows about him, and in the last week or so, he's more than likely broke up $500 worth of gates in our corrals. What I mean, just walks around and smashes them down, you know. Well, those kind of things get pretty tiring. At the same time, you have to have those kind of cattle, because they're the ones that cowboys like to get on, or maybe they don't like to get on, I don't know which, but anyway, they're the ones that perform well. And we don't raise too many bulls of our own. We buy most of them. McKinnon Ranches over here at Bassano, they are raising quite a few bulls now, and a lot of those bulls are turning out to be real good bucking bulls.
What are they going into now? Are they still Brahma crosses for the most part? What makes the best bucking bull?
I would think that a Brahma cross makes the best bucking bull, crossed with most anything, really. You know what I mean? You still have to come up with the elimination deal on whether they can buck or whether they can't. And when you find one that bucks, that normally they keep on.
But they're just plain cantankerous, most of them.
They're hard to handle. What I mean, unless you have good corrals and keep them right in all the time, why, all we ever had was trouble with them until we kept them locked up all the time.
I think rodeo fans really enjoy bull riding. Maybe you don't enjoy the event as much as a contractor, but maybe you don't agree. Do you think saddle bronc is still the premier event?
I think in this country it is, yeah. I think that bull riding is a very exciting event, and like you say, there's a lot of people like to see it. But basically, still, saddle bronc riding, if the horses are of the right caliber, I think it's maybe the best event going. Of course, I could be partial too.
You've got a lot of colorful names for your broncs, Reg. Do you name them yourself?
Well, I name most of them. I don't maybe name them all, but I name most of them. I drive around the country, you know, to a lot of different cities and a lot of different places, and you see a lot of different names on placards and things like that, and I have a book and I just write them in there.
There's really no ranking system on the broncs, is there? I guess it's just the top bronc riders that determine which is the best saddle bronc of the year, for example, huh?
Yeah, that's true enough. The top bronc riders, they determine what are the better horses of the year, and I sometimes don't know whether I entirely agree with that, and the reason is quite obvious, because I believe that a horse that's really hard to ride and a horse that bucks off a lot of guys is possibly the best horse you have, and they don't agree with that. They figure that a horse that bucks mediocre and they can mark exceptionally good on is a better horse for them, and I have no quarrel with that. That's true, but for the rodeo business, I think that the better the horse and the more guys he bucks off and stuff, the better horse he is for everyone concerned.
Well, the Cowboys must think pretty highly of your stock. You're pretty well represented each year at both the Canadian and the American national finals, aren't you?
Yeah, we are. We're pretty well represented. That's true, and what I mean, we kind of feel pretty good about it.
What did you have, for example, last year in Oklahoma City at the national finals?
Well, we had 14 head of horses at the national finals in Oklahoma City last year.
And in Edmonton?
Well, I think it was right around 20. We had 12 or 13 bareback horses and 6 or 7 saddle broncs. We don't buck 3 bars as much as we normally used to do, so we feel that Moonshine is the greatest bareback horse that we have in our string. And we've got some young horses coming up that I think that these Cowboys are going to be talking about. I think a horse called Clyde. He's right here in this bunch of horses right here. He's just a young horse. He's 4 coming 5 years old. And we raised him, and a horse called Cactus, and one called Billy the Kid. I think those bareback horses are going to be among the top horses that are around the country.
Reg, as a contractor, what do you see as greatness in a bronc? Is it that explosiveness, the consistency? What really makes a great one?
Both. Consistency and explosiveness. We got a horse right here. Well, he's down there in the corral right now, a horse we call Not In. I think the Cowboys will tell you that he's one of the most spectacular bucking horses that's being bucked today. He's 5 years old, and I look for great things from this horse. And the reason that the Cowboys like him so good is he could buck them off. There's no question about that. But man, the crowd and everyone just loves him. He really is an explosive bucking horse.
When you start out your broncs, when you start bucking them, do you break them in cold at a major rodeo, or do you start them in with novice riders?
Well, normally we start them in on the novice events, amateur bareback and amateur bronc riding, things like that. Because, you know, it's hardly fair for a colt to start out with some experienced old tough hand on him that knows all the angles, you know what I mean? The colt has to kind of build up to the same point just the way ball players or anyone else does.
You hear lots of talk about the bronc that can't be rode. I guess there is no such thing, eh?
I wouldn't think so. I've had some horses that I thought weren't going to get a rode, but they've gotten, every one of them been rode one time or another.
Do you have any quarrel with the Cowboys with the way they handle your stock?
I don't really have any quarrel with them. I cuss them a lot, you know, but I don't really have any quarrel with them. I feel that a lot of these guys are guilty of cinching these saddle broncs much, much tighter than it's necessary to keep the saddle on. And of course, what I mean, it's all fad with if one guy who is an exceptionally good bronc rider rode with a paper hat, they'd all have paper hats, so that's what I put that down to.
Are you always there, or one of your men like to flank the animal? That's the contractor's responsibility.
Well, we try to be, because it's a very important part of the rodeo business, is how those horses are flanked. You know what I mean? There's more horses spoiled with overflanks than there are with underflanks. A lot of people don't understand that, but I don't think you accomplish anything with hurting livestock. I think you accomplish a lot more by being in moderation, and by hurting, I mean if you say, for instance, you take that flank strap that we're talking about and you pull it up excessively tight, it's not going to really hurt, but it makes the horse very uncomfortable, and he can't perform because he's in a bind as well as he normally if he was free, so to speak.
These horses really become superstars in their own right, and I hear some of the cowboys, like Tom Buse, for example, saying they should put more emphasis on making a name of the animals. And I imagine, as a contractor, you'd sure go along with that, wouldn't you?
Well, I've always gone along with this idea, but they thought it was because I owned the horses, but that's not necessarily so. I think we're missing a very important part of the rodeo by not emphasizing more of the caliber of stock that they have at those rodeos.
When these broncs become the great personalities in rodeo, it's a great selling point, isn't it, too?
Absolutely, but I mean, there's a lot of people, you know, would drive a lot of miles to see, you mentioned a little while ago, a horse by the name of Sarcy Sorrow, which undoubtedly is a great horse, Harry Volz, you know, and we have some horses like Moonshine. I know of guys that go to the rodeos all over southern Alberta just to watch Moonshine.
At most rodeos, while the spectators are cheering the cowboys to stay aboard, I suppose you're cheering to see them bucked off, are you, if it's your stock?
Well, I surely am. I'll tell you one thing. They had a news reporter come to Oklahoma City here a number of years ago when they bucked that bull of Jim Shoulders the last time, and the old cowboy Freckles Brown was on him, and I thought it was pretty aptly said when this news reporter, who was a young gal there, she said, you know, the bull had a great weight on his back. He had 12,000 fans and only one man pulling for him, and that was the man behind the chutes.